It's time for Michael Morales Torres and Lucha Libre Online.
Saludos a toda la afición de la lucha libre. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestra invitada en la noche de hoy. Ella es de Rusia para el mundo, sin embargo, viene directamente desde Tokio, Japón. She is the Russian Dynamite, Masha Slamovich. Masha, it is such an honor to have you back here on Lucha Libre Online. How's life been treating you lately? How are you doing today?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you for having me back here tonight. And lately, everything has been pretty well. I'd like to say, knock on wood, the beginning of 2021 has been fruitful so far. How's your year been so far?
So far, it's been well for us in Lucha Libre Online. Thank you so much for asking. We're really glad to know you're doing well because the pandemic hit last year and you were on a foreign country. You moved from the United States to Japan and being in a different country than yours. So you moved from Russia to US, then to Japan, then you had the pandemic. How did you manage to be on a foreign country, literally in middle of a pandemic, with wrestling being under restrictions?
I think that being in Japan during the pandemic was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. If I had went back to Russia or the United States, I wouldn't have been able, to wrestle, much less to train because the gyms were shut down. I mean, all of life was really shut down. In Japan, we did have a state of emergency, but it was a lot more lenient. The bars and like movie theaters and all that stuff was closed. But I, living in a dojo, have a gym 5 feet away from my house, and we were still doing wrestling shows, but we were doing them with no audience. We were taping them and streaming them live straight from the dojo. So I was blessed enough to pretty much only have the month of April off and would continue to train. And then in May, we pretty much got back to streaming the shows, and things were pretty normal aside from like not going out.
So I'm going to translate now to Spanish. Masha menciona que estar en Japón durante la pandemia es lo mejor que le pudo haber ocurrido porque, contrario a Estados Unidos, que era donde estaba anteriormente, en Japón las cosas no se detuvieron en ningún momento. Ella está en un dojo constantemente, tuvo la oportunidad de mantenerse entrenando, tuvieron la oportunidad de continuar grabando sus shows, tiene un gimnasio a 5 pies de distancia de ella, así que la vida, por lo menos durante la pandemia para la industria de la lucha libre en Japón, no se detuvo. Sí tuvo unas restricciones, pero nada fuera de este mundo, y pudo continuar viviendo su vida de manera normal, que eso es algo muy importante que destacamos de la industria de la lucha libre en Japón. So Masha, let's talk about your work in Japan. You are currently employed by Marvelous, and a really, really, really good company over there. You are on magazines, you are on shirts, you're in every single product out there. You are a true superstar in Japan at this point. How did you ended up leaving New York? Because we spoke to you the exact day you were traveling to Japan last year, so that was really fun. And then a year later, we are seeing you on interviews. We're seeing you on magazines and everywhere. And we these days we lately check the Marvelous page, and oh wait, this is Masha Slamovich here, and this is Masha here again, and this is Masha everywhere, because everyone in Japan loves the Russian Dynamite. But why did you took the decision of moving from the US to do pro wrestling in Japan?
Well, the way that I got over to working with Marvelous was in, I want to say August or September of 2019. Marvelous came over to the United States to run a tryout, which I participated in. And then in December, I got an email saying that I was chosen from the tryout and that they would begin to process my paperwork to bring me over to Japan for what was originally a 3-month tour. So, like you said, you had spoken to me as I was on my layover in Taiwan, flying over to Japan. And after being here for maybe 2.5 months, I received an offer from our boss, Chigusa Nagayo, and that she offered me to stay here and to continue training to, improve on my skills and also to continue working with Marvelous Pro Wrestling and other companies such as Sendai Girls. Of course, I decided to stay, but then the coronavirus shut things down. And by the time that July rolled around, or June, you know, they just kept asking me. They're like, hey, do you want to stay? Because we want you to stay. So we'll extend your visa again. And then they asked me again. And then they asked me again. And at this point, it's like, yeah, you're just going to stay here. We're not even going to ask you. We're just going to keep extending your visa because you're part of the roster now.
So I'm going to translate this interesting story to Spanish. Masha menciona que en agosto del 2019 hace un trial en Estados Unidos para Marvelous. La empresa estaba buscando talento. Ella somete toda su documentación, hace el proceso de tryout y en diciembre la llaman y la dicen que la seleccionaron. De las personas que habían en aquel momento, Masha fue la mejor. Y le dan la oportunidad entonces a ella de ir a Japón. Comienzan a procesar su trabajo, su paperwork, como ya mencionas, para la visa y todas las cosas. Y lo que inicialmente era un tour de 3 meses pasa a ser algo mucho más fijo. Y pues de repente llega la pandemia en Japón y ya no le preguntan tan siquiera como que, mira, vamos a extenderte tanto ni tanto. No, ya eres parte del roster de Marvelous. Bienvenida a casa. Y ya de repente Japón se convirtió en su hogar nuevamente. Lo que inicialmente era un tour de 3 meses se convirtió en algo fijo para ella, que eso es algo excelente. Tuvimos la oportunidad de hablar el año anterior con ella cuando ella estaba en su escala en Taiwán. Y ahora, después de un año, vemos lo mucho que ha crecido en la industria de la lucha libre japonesa. And how's been working with Marvelous so far? How's been your experience with the company? And how is the creative process back there?
Working with Marvelous has been absolutely fantastic, you know, aside from the training that we receive here and just the company and the office taking care of us, taking care of me, you know, being a foreigner who's living in Japan now, stuck here because of the pandemic, whatever you want to call it. They've taken great care of me, and our boss sees, you know, she saw opportunities in me, so she has always followed through on her word to send me out to different companies, which means I have not only been working for Marvelous, but several other Joshi Pro Wrestling promotions. So I'd say that everything in Marvelous is absolutely top tier, from my opinion.
Perfect, so I'll translate that. Menciona que todo en Marvelous es top, es lo mejor que puede ocurrir. No solamente está trabajando para Marvelous, sino que como las diferentes alianzas la permiten, está trabajando para diferentes empresas de lucha libre, o Pro Wrestling o Joshi Pro Wrestling allá en Japón, y le dan la oportunidad de continuar creciendo. Así que todo con Marvelous hasta ahora en su carrera va viento en popa. What's the most complicated part and the best part of wrestling in front of the Japanese audience? Because it's been considered by many of the wrestlers I've interviewed as the most respectful one. They are silent, but they are judgy. They are a really easygoing audience if you know what you're doing, but a true nightmare if you don't understand the product over there. So far, you've been doing great. How's been your experience working with the Japanese audience?
Well, like you just said, the Japanese audience are very, very respectful, very kind and appreciative towards the wrestlers. Like you said, they're very quiet, but they know their stuff. So they're watching you and they're judging you. If you play everything out correctly, it'll be very good, because if you can get the fans to bite where you want them to bite, and you are like the puppeteer, so you control the fans' emotions. If you do it correctly, it's going to lead to a very entertaining experience because they'll react how you want them to react. Now, that's the great part, because like I said, they're a very good type of fan base. They're very kind. They're super nice to us, even online, you know, for the most part, aside from that stuff that happened back in June. But I guess like you said, a negative part, I don't think it's negative, but if I had to like pick something, it would be if you mess something up, there is about 100 cameras in that audience that are going to take a picture of it, and it's going to be all over the internet the next day.
So I'm going to translate this to Spanish. Menciona que obviamente la audiencia en Japón es sumamente respetuosa, incluso en el internet lo está también, fuera de la historia que ya lamentablemente sabemos, pero que la audiencia es muy buena. Sin embargo, hay un detalle, y es que si la embarras o te va mal, hay cientos de cámaras en la audiencia, y Y todo el mundo va a asegurarse de tomar una foto para que eso esté en el internet al otro día, algo que es muy difícil para todas las personas porque literalmente toda la audiencia está dispuesta a capturar el momento. You, as far as we know, you had the opportunity of being inside an Impact Wrestling ring on 2019. You can correct us if that's incorrect, but you were at an Explosion episode against Jordan Grace. Is that correct?
Yes, I want to say that happened in 2019. Yeah, that did happen in 2019.
Yeah, 2019
was
it was a big year for you, and we hope 2021 is even better for you. But how was your experience working with Impact for that taping on 2019? You were, as I mentioned, against Jordan Grace on June 2019 at Explosion. How was your experience with the company so far in that opportunity you had?
The opportunity that I had with Impact Wrestling was a very, very good experience. I came the previous day on June 8th, I want to say, pretty much just to shake hands, meet people, set up the ring, and just the right place, right time. I got chosen to do a match with Jessica Havoc on Impact that night, and apparently they were impressed with my work, which is how I got to wrestle Jordan Grace on Explosion the next night. And working with the company, it's like a calm environment. It's very easy to work in. At least for me, being there that day, I felt like it was. Walk in, get your stuff done. There's no chaos or anything like that, and it's a lot less of a high pressure situation than being in WWE, for example, on like Monday Night Raw doing extra work. So I loved my experience with Impact Wrestling, and I would definitely enjoy to have another one.
So I'm going to translate now to Spanish. Mencionaba obviamente que estuvo en Impact Wrestling en el año 2019. Tuvo la oportunidad de que inicialmente iba a ir a hacer un trabajo, a montar el ring, a saludar a las personas, a conocer cómo era el ambiente. Y le dieron la oportunidad de luchar con Havoc en aquel momento dado. Y su trabajo fue tan bueno que le impresionó a todos atrás. Y le dieron la oportunidad de luchar a Jordan Grace al otro día en Explosion. Menciona que su experiencia con la empresa fue positiva, fue buena, todo el mundo estaba encantado con su trabajo, todo estructurado y para su estilo de lucha encajaba perfectamente, así que menciona que le fue muy bien. Masha, before we go to the last question, I wanted to plug in something para todo. I'll do it in Spanish because it is our main audience. Para todos los promotores en Puerto Rico, en Alemania, en Panamá, Japón, en Argentina, en Chile, en India, en todas partes del mundo que nos estén observando, en el mismo Estados Unidos, pueden contactar a Masha Slamovich como ancoisin at gmail.com. En la descripción la vamos a dejar aquí al final, ancoisin at gmail.com. Se escribe ANNKHOZINE at gmail.com para todos los promotores de todo el mundo que quieren llevar un talento plus que está activo ahora mismo en Marvelous en Japón a su empresa. En adición, pueden adquirir su mercancía a todos los fanáticos en prowrestlingtees.com/Masha Slamovich. Es prowrestlingtees.com/Masha Slamovich. Ahí van a poder encontrar todo tipo de camisa y de diseño excelente y en tela de alta calidad porque es Pro Wrestling Tees, la mercancía oficial de Masha. En adición a todos los fanáticos to all the fans in Japan, she also has available her Susuri shop. It is available on her link tree. You can find it directly on her Instagram page. Just go and click the link tree and you can enter there to the Susuri shop. Last but not least, Patreon también lo tiene disponible en su link tree, patreon.com. Ahí la pueden encontrar como Masha Slamovich para ser parte de la familia de patrons de Masha, que cada vez sigue creciendo y creciendo. Y por último, la pueden seguir en Instagram, en Twitter y en Facebook como Masha Slamovich. La pueden buscar así mismo. Les va a aparecer MASA, espacio obviamente SLAMOVICH, Masha Slamovich. And after this riddle, spelling your name in Spanish for me, let's go to the last question. Masha, do you believe the women in Japan are currently the number one in the world? Because we've seen people coming outside from there, either foreigners or locals, as Io Shirai, as Asuka, as many others, and people are extremely impressed in this part of the world. You've been wrestling and training constantly. with top talent there. You are a top talent over there too. So do you consider the Japanese women in wrestling are the number one in the world?
In my opinion, I would definitely have to say that that is true. I have worked with women and men in so many different countries around the world, and I would have to say that the women in Japan are absolutely some of the best women I've worked around the entire planet.
Perfect, Masha. Thank you so much for your time. We're always wishing you the best of lucks, either in Marvelous or in the company you have the opportunity of pursuing after this, because that's the magic of the pro wrestling industry. You can be in Japan one day and then suddenly you can go back to the US or go back to, I don't know, to England, for example, and go there for a 3-month tour and ended up staying like you just did in Japan. So we're always wishing you the best of lucks in your career. We're rooting for you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight, and thank you so much for your kind words.
Perfect.